What's up, Taiwan? I'm Brossard with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. We begin with the latest in a joint search that's happening off Jinmen for survivors of a capsized Chinese fishing vessel. In a rare sign of unity, Taiwan's and China's coast guards have joined forces to search for survivors, but 2 people are still missing. Rick Lauert is following developments for us in Taipei. Rick, what do we know about this operation?
Well, it's now been 36 hours since that boat capsized, and of course, every hour counts. As the clock ticks by, the chances of survival are getting slimmer. There's still 2 people left in the water around those islands of Jinmen, 2 people drowned, and 2 people were rescued from the water alive. Now, we know that at least 4 Taiwanese Coast Guard vessels and 6 Chinese Coast Guard vessels are involved in a search with a radius of 12 nautical miles from the location of that capsizing. But today, we've also been hearing news of a second operation. Now that's taking place off the island of Mazu, another Taiwanese island close to China's coast. What happened there is that a Chinese national fell off of a boat outside of Taiwan's waters, and another joint operation is there looking for him. Now, I spoke to Taiwan's Coast Guard earlier, and I asked whether this type of incident was common. He said it's not particularly uncommon, and that it could be particularly bad at this time of year during the spring when we experience bad weather.
The cooperation between China and Taiwan here is itself notable, but how much can we read into it?
Well, we can't read too much into it because, of course, when it comes to saving lives at sea, the 2 countries are going to cooperate. We know that they've saved more than 100 lives together in this area over the last 3 years. But what is interesting is the timing. This comes just a few weeks after a very serious incident near Jinmen. Now, that's where Taiwanese Coast Guard chased a Chinese vessel out of Taiwan's waters. That boat capsized, and 2 Chinese nationals died. This has prompted a very angry response from Beijing. It's been demanding answers, been demanding compensation, and Beijing also said that it would step up its patrols around this area and enforce its maritime law in Taiwan's waters. So we were all bracing for an escalation of the situation. But what we've seen over the last couple of days with these joint rescue missions looks like the opposite of that. In fact, Taiwan's Coast Guard has said that Beijing has been respecting protocols and staying out of Taiwan's waters. So it looks like after a few tense weeks, there could be calmer waters ahead.
Thank you, Rick. That was Rick Glauert in Taipei. A Taipei City Councilor is being investigated for alleged corruption. Chen Congwen of the KMT is accused of pressuring the Taipei City Police Department to purchase surveillance cameras from a company he has connections to. 8 other people, including workers from the camera manufacturer, have also been questioned. Prosecutors want to hold Chen incommunicado, but he says the case is politically motivated.
监督检察局太认真，被报复，司法迫害，政治追杀。
President Tsai and TPP Chair Ko Wen-je have met for the first time since January's national elections. During a 2-hour meeting at the presidential office, they discussed the country's labor pension system, defense budget, social safety nets, and inter-party communications. Tsai said she hopes to have a similar meeting with KMT Chair Eric Zhu. The cabinet wants to improve safety in Taiwan's factories after a fatal factory fire last year. But as John Van Chest reports, not everyone is convinced the steps it's taking will result in much change.
Nearly 6 months on, the burnt ruins of this southern Taiwan factory are still not cleared away. When it caught fire in September, it had 30 times the legal limit of flammable chemicals in storage. The result was a fierce blaze that killed 10 people and left over 100 injured. Firefighters are still outraged over the incident, which killed 4 of their comrades. Now, the government is trying to make sure this sort of fire, made so destructive by undeclared chemicals, won't happen again. The cabinet has approved an amendment to the Factory Management Act that will raise fines on factories that don't declare dangerous materials or falsify their declarations. The maximum fine will go up 100 times to $150,000. Already, some local officials, including those in the southern Taiwan county where last year's fire happened, are optimistic.
从环境部的化学域开始去勾稽危险的化学物质到哪些工厂去，勾稽以后，它会产出一个疑似的危险的名单，通报给各主管机关。
But some firefighters are skeptical. Though the maximum fine has gone up, they say that's hardly a big deal for a company like the factory's owner, Launch Technologies, which in the first half of 2023, before the fire, made around $10 million US.
真的要保障我们的话，第一是我们认为罚款应该要以每个公司的营业额要有一个集聚，就是营业额达到多少是这样的罚款，然后再达到多少，再往上再超过多少，再往上一个集聚。我们认为营业额就是罚款应该有一个集聚的标准，然后再来就是说我们认为应该也要有刑责，因为没有刑责，其实业者他们都会想要钻漏洞。
Fire safety consultant Lin Jinhong does think the higher fine will help, but he says many factory owners don't actually know that some of the materials they store can be hazardous. And he says it will take more than fines to stop Taiwan's frequent factory fires from turning deadly.
就算他申报，他还是有可能会发生危害啊！因为他一开始就冒烟嘛，所以他会有很多问题要一起去考虑。比方说你的储存场所，然后呢，你一开始的应变的这些程序，所以呢，他绝对不是单纯申报就可以解决所有的问题。
It's safety culture, he says, that needs an overhaul. And until that changes, even the best laws can only do so much. Delphine Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's Supreme Court has overturned a guilty verdict for an indigenous man who hunted protected animals. Tama Talum is a member of Taiwan's indigenous Bunun tribe. In 2013, he hunted protected species for his sick mother to make traditional indigenous food. Talum killed the animals without permission using an illegal homemade firearm. He was sentenced to 3.5 years behind bars. In 2021, President Tsai pardoned Talum out of respect for indigenous traditions, but the pardon did not acquit him of the ruling, only the punishment. The court's ruling now clears his record. A Reuters report says former U.S. President Donald Trump authorized the CIA to launch a covert campaign against the Chinese government. 3 former officials told the news agency that U.S. intelligence used fake internet identities to spread negative narratives on Chinese social media. They said the goal was to turn public opinion in the country against President Xi Jinping's government. The effort began in 2019, 2 years into Trump's time in office. Former President Trump looks set for a rematch this fall with current President Joe Biden. Taiwan will be closely watching the outcome as the U.S. is Taiwan's biggest military backer. To find out how a Trump or Biden victory in November could impact Taiwan's defense, our reporter Jaime Ocon spoke to Eric Gomez, a defense analyst with the Cato Institute in Washington, D.C.
Now that we know that Biden and Trump are set for this rematch in the 2024 U.S. presidential election, what can we expect in terms of weapon sales to Taiwan if, for example, Trump is elected?
Yeah, so under the Trump administration, arms sales increased very significantly relative to the Obama administration and even, sort of the George W. Bush administration. For both of those, arms sales happened, but at relatively low levels. But for Trump, and this was true across not only Taiwan, but sort of all recipients, Trump made it a priority of his administration to sell more weapons abroad. So he sells a lot to Taiwan. Not necessarily delivers a lot, but sells a lot. And that's where we see a lot of this current backlog that we have is authorized or notified by the Trump administration and now being delivered. Some of it's been delivered in the Biden admin.
And on the other side, what can we expect for Taiwan's defense if Biden continues to stay in office?
A continuation of the Biden administration would be very interesting from the Taiwan backlog and sort of U.S. weapon sales to Taiwan perspective. On the one hand, I think what Biden has been focusing on in general has been better than what Trump is focusing on. But if we get a Biden administration around too, then I think we could expect to see sort of this emphasis on maintaining and munitions continue. The other big question here is what happens with the war in Ukraine. I've written elsewhere about how the it's not so much of a direct overlap between weapons sent to Ukraine and weapons that are owed to Taiwan. There is more overlap over time as the Ukraine war has gone on. I think if Biden wins re-election, then we're more likely to see continued large levels of U.S. support going to Ukraine. What this might do for Taiwan is create certain pressures on the U.S. defense industrial base that make it difficult to get certain things to Taiwan quickly.
That was our reporter Jaime Ocon speaking to Eric Gomez, a defense analyst with the Cato Institute in Washington, D.C. A court ruling in Sapporo has brought Japan one step closer to marriage equality. The High Court in the northern city ruled that Japan's ban on same-sex marriage is unconstitutional because it violates the fundamental rights to equality. It follows a similar ruling in a Tokyo district court earlier this week. The decisions could pave the way for Japan's parliament to codify a same-sex marriage law. Polls show around 70% of people in Japan support such unions.
本当に望んでた待ちに待った違憲判決が出て今すっごく嬉しい気持ちです。これまで多くの方がこの訴訟に協力してくださったおかげで出た判決だとも思っております。
Tomato lovers in Taiwan can soon keep their favorite produce fresh for up to a year. A tech firm has come up with a method to preserve beef tomatoes way beyond their natural shelf life. Joyce Tsung has the story.
Plump, juicy tomatoes are staying fresh for longer with the help of technology. Taiwan's largest beef tomato supplier has developed a way to extend the shelf life of their produce from about 15 days to 1 whole year.
寒天的时阵咱透过冷链这个技术来甲保存tomato 会当延长到1年以上，甚至会当来出口去世界各国。
The global frozen food market is valued at about $265 billion US, and demand is rising, as it is a popular alternative to fresh and canned products to save money and cut down on food waste. As Taiwan develops its own flash freezing technology, which freezes the fruit so quickly ice crystals don't get a chance to form inside, the country is hoping to get in on the global market, starting with tomatoes.
这个调节整个番茄的供应的这个系统，那供应呢量多的时候，我们就把它做一些处理，处理之后这是熊条，只要有个冷链的设备。
Consumers in Taiwan are set to reap the most immediate benefits, having more stable supplies and prices of beef tomatoes year-round. A precedent farmers hope to extend to other fresh goods soon too. Andy Xue and Joyce Chen for TaiwanPlus.
U.S. lawmakers have proposed a bill that would allow NASA to work directly with Taiwan's National Space Agency. The bill comes as a NASA research plane continues to fly over southern Taiwan, collecting data on air quality. The bill's bipartisan sponsors say the United States One China policy prevents U.S. scientific agencies from working with their Taiwanese counterparts. But the new bill would break this status quo, encouraging collaboration in the aerospace field. Pilgrims on an 8-day walk are ready to turn around after reaching the town of Lugang in western Taiwan. The procession starts and ends at Longde Temple in Taoyuan in the north. Worshippers follow a sedan chair holding the image of the goddess Mazu. This year, the procession endured high and low temperatures as well as heavy rains to make the trek, which includes music, dancing, and other performances. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today, come with us to Mexico for this Indigenous ceremony in honor of Popocatépetl volcano. I'm Philip Brossard. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
I'm Leslie Liao in New York City, and this is TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.